Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, I will be replacing the fuel filter regulator in my 2001 BMW 525i. So the reason why I'm replacing this is, well, for a few reasons actually. One, I don't know when the last time the fuel filter was changed in this vehicle, or if it's ever been changed since it was brand new. So it's likely to have probably at least 100,000, maybe even 200,000 miles on it. But I'm also having some fuel supply or air supply problems on the intake side of the engine that I'm diagnosing in a separate video. So this is only loosely related to a lean condition, which could be caused by the regulator. The part I'm using is the KL96 from Mahle. This is the part in question. It is made in Germany. However, you should note that if you look carefully here, the regulator, which is at the top, is made in Brazil. So this is made in Brazil. The rest of this is made in Germany. The way they make these is actually a pretty cool process. You start out with a big disc of aluminum. That's a special alloy that will allow you to do the deep draw process to get this into this shape. And then you start by punching it little by little and, through huge dies until it's a long tube. And it looks like it is that crimped or welded? I believe it is welded. However, the consistency of that looks more like a crimp. So, that's not a real big deal. So there are, the inlets are here at the bottom, as you can see in here, and then the output's right here, and I believe this is a vacuum reference for the pressure regulator. This theoretically should be a really easy job because all I have to do is lift up the car, undo a panel underneath the driver's side, right about actually at the driver's side door, undo 4 hoses and put them back on. However, jobs that you think are easy always end up being some of the more difficult ones. So we'll see how it goes. The other thing I like is to see this manufacturing date here. So this was made on 20 March of 2019. So this hasn't been sitting around for half a decade. This is a relatively new part. And the other thing I'm going to do is actually disassemble the old filter, if possible, to see how dirty it is, if it's dirty at all. I imagine it has never been replaced, so it's probably going to be pretty scuzzy looking. So let's head out to the shop, but I first have to finish my coffee. So here we are at the engine. The reason why we're here is because I want to loosen off the cap for the Schrader valve and then depress the Schrader relief there, open the valve up to release the pressure. I haven't run this car in probably, 36 hours or so. So there shouldn't be a ton of pressure left in here. But it's a good idea to relieve any pressure. It looks like there is none. So I think we're good over here. There shouldn't be any residual pressure in the system now. And that means that when I go to undo the hoses for the filter and regulator, I shouldn't get sprayed with fuel too badly. But it will be leaking, so I'll address that in just a minute. From a filming perspective, this is where things are going to start getting very difficult because I do not have a means of holding my camera this low and in this tight of a spot underneath the car. So this is going to be more of, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it off camera and then show you what I did. And you should be able to piece together the in-between parts. So the part we're looking at, the fuel filter regulator, should be underneath this plastic panel right by the driver's side door. That means driver's side American, the wrong side if you're in England, Australia, Japan, or one of those other weird countries where the driver is on the wrong side of the car. So this just looks like it comes off with these dumb plastic clips, the ones that break every time you try to take them apart. There's a few of them around the periphery. If you're doing this yourself, you'll see them. So I'm going to undo all that, take the panel off, and then I'll bring it back to show you what I find. Here's a look at the panel off the car. In this orientation, that would be the front of the car. That is inboard, that is aft, and that would be to the outside where the door is. So along this periphery here, you'll have the plastic clips, but here and here, these are going to be these giant looking nut washer things. I'll grab one real quick. So actually here are all the fastener types you're going to have to take off. There will be 2 of these, and those are going to be here and here. There will be, what, 5 or so of these. You remove the plastic core. It comes out completely, and then you're left with this, and then you just pull away the plastic. And those, again, go at the top here. And then you'll have a few of these, if it'll focus. And those are actually up here. The fender cover, the fender liner, goes up and over here. You can see kind of where that goes. And there's one here on the edge. There's one here and one here. So it's a total of, let me count that up. It should be about 12 different fasteners to hold this panel on. So I haven't even looked to see what's above this, but on the flip side of this, yeah, I don't even know what that is. But here's the inside. So this is the in the correct orientation for the car. There was a whole bunch of rocks, some spider egg nest things, a couple bees. It was weird. This thing gets caked full of junk. It's actually maybe not a bad idea just to pull yours off and clean it out. Back under the car now, we can see that I was correct in the placement of this component. So we have a vacuum line up here. We have the feed to the fuel rail. This might be a return line right here. I'm not quite sure of that. And then we have 2 more lines back here. Now I've heard that these are weird hose clamps that don't use a normal fastener, so I'll have to try and figure out a way to adjust those. And I cannot see, maybe that's a date right there. It looks like 23 April of 2010. So it's been 10 years, so it was changed 9 years into its life, and now it's been 10 years. So I'd say this thing is definitely due for a change. So I have my camera propped up precariously. Hopefully you can see everything that I'm going to be doing. It did occur to me that just because this manufacturing date is 2010 doesn't mean it was changed in 2010. It just means that the earliest it could have been changed was 2010. So this could have been changed 2 years before I got the car, but based on how nasty these hose clamps look, I'd say it's been in here since roughly 2010, maybe somewhere from there to 2012. That aside, whoever replaced this in 2010-ish did replace it with normal style hose clamps, so I will be able to unscrew these with a normal screwdriver, which is really convenient. So if you worked in this car previously and you did this, thank you. I doubt they'd be watching this, but just in case, a little bit of kindness goes a long way. So I will remove these one by one. And I will be putting on some gloves because I hate getting the smell of gas on my hands. And this isn't the cleanest process. I don't really think you need to catch pan necessarily because the gasoline will just evaporate, but if you're not working on this vehicle in a controlled environment, definitely get a catch pan, you know, save the baby seals and all that. So I guess there's nothing more to do but to get to it. But you know, on second thought, I'll just grab a pan. I had one sitting there. It'll also be an easy spot to dump the filter into. Okay, new game plan. I'm going to take each hose off individually and plug it with an M10 bolt. And that way I can just work on this thing off the car. A mistake a lot of DIYers, home mechanics, and even some professional mechanics make is trying to do everything on the car, when it would be 10 times simpler to just remove the part from the car, work on it on the bench, where you have a lot more leverage, a lot more just space and ergonomics to work. Because working on your back underneath the car is not the best place to try and accomplish a task like this. So I think the best way to move forward is just to get the entire thing off the car. All right, so all you missed there is just me struggling for a little bit. Currently this is now drooped down and draining back a little bit for whatever was in the filter. So I can actually remove this from the front end now. Maybe a little easier. The key here is not to bend the hard lines. All right, then I'm just gonna let this filter sit here and drain for a second. It has quite a large capacity. So I think I'm gonna cut it here and then I'll meet you back over at the bench. If it isn't already obvious, this does pose quite a large fire hazard, so don't do anything stupid, because this is just a tub full of gasoline now. And the goal is to get this clamp off of this filter. This is also a KL96, so the part number is correct. However, I don't see a manufacturer name on here. This regulator is made in Germany, though. So that's a bit of a difference between the new part and this part. I think maybe trying to hold this retainer captive as I unscrew this might help. You know what, I'm just going to try and remove that completely. And then I'll only have to deal with fighting the rubber piece. There's that. I would use some silicone spray here, but I don't have it on me. I have it in another tool bag that I don't have here right now. There we go. Man, that was stuck on there. Nasty. Well, there's the old part. I'll try to pop this thing open somehow and see if we can get a look inside. But I want to be very careful about how I cut it open, because I don't want to create any sparks, because it is full of gasoline. Well, less full now that it's emptied out. So, man, that's what happens when you touch this old rubber, is it just coats your hands full of black rubber deterioration. But something I do like about BMW is they make a lot of their components out of stainless. So it ends up just looking beautiful even after nearly 20 years of service. Stainless is a fantastic thing for automotive applications. More important for marine applications, of course, but you know, when you live in the Rust Belt, it's almost as bad as living at sea with how much salt they put on the roads in the winter. All right, well, let's get this on the new part. Just a quick comparison. So, pretty much exactly the same. The only difference really is the name. The part number reads off a little bit differently, and that this regulator is made in Brazil, not Germany. However, the rest of the container is made in Germany, so I don't know exactly how the supply chain would work for that. And I'm going to try and match where this was on the old part, because that way it'll mean I'll have to screw around minimally with the whole clamp system once it's back on the car. That's close enough. It's clamped down pretty hard again. So back to the car we go. I did end up looking at the type of fuel line that I have in stock, and unfortunately I have something that is really, really close to the size I need, but not quite, so I'm going to have to just run with this old stuff. It is soft enough that it'll work for probably the rest of the life of the car, but it would have been nice to get some fresh rubber on there. Keep your jokes to yourself. Something I didn't really think to do until now that it's too late is clock this clamp into the right position so that the ends of the filter end up in the right spot, because I'm thinking it should be rotated more this way, but I can't move this clamp because it's on there so tightly. So when I clock it so that it'll end up bolting on correctly, this tube is up here is rubbing, and that's probably going to end up rubbing through. So I might have to take this back off and redo this. Yeah, I guess I'll do that. I'd rather get this done the right way, not have to do it all over again. You know what, that's acceptable. All right, so I'm gonna do these back too. I can do those off camera. One thing that you should note is that they have to go in the right way. The fuel line, there's 3 lines here. The middle 2 are for sure, as I know, for fuel. They go into the fuel filter. The middle one of these 3 goes into the centralmost input on the back of the filter. The one that is inboard here, the most inboard one in the car, goes to the one that is to the outside of the back of the filter. Or at least that's the way it is on my filter. Make sure you double check with yours before you reinstall it. Otherwise you may run into some problems. So I'll be right back once this is all re-secured. All right, it's just been a couple minutes. I've got everything tightened back up and in place. Now, before you get carried away and put the panel back on, it's very important that you turn the ignition to the on position so that the fuel system tries to prime, and then you will be able to see if you have any leaks. So that's what I'm going to do now. Then after I check and verify that there are no leaks, then I will cycle the car to the on position and then the accessory position a couple times just for the pump to prime a few times, and then I will attempt to start the car. I do not expect it to start up instantly like it usually would, just because everything needs to fill up. So let's do that. All right, so the car just verifying, is in neutral. I'm not going to start the car. That everything is in on position. And there are no leaks. So let's turn that off. Turn it back on. Okay, everything's working great. And again, no leaks to speak of. So let's try and start the car. Once again, verifying that we are in neutral. Clutch in. Okay, that is idling normally. As I suspected, it did not fire off right away. That actually fired off quite a bit quicker than it usually does, which is good. It already would start within the first crank, but that was even faster, which is odd. But hey, I won't complain about that. So I don't want to run that too much inside here because I don't want any carbon monoxide poisoning. That's never a good time. So that's really all there is to it. Replacing the fuel filter regulator on an E39 chassis with the M54 engine is really quite simple. I was surprised. A lot of these newer cars make it a lot more difficult to replace the fuel filter. Such as, I believe, my Z4, the fuel filter is built into the fuel pump, and to do that you have to drop the whole tank out of the car, and I am not looking forward to ever having to do that, but it's probably something I will have to do someday if I plan to keep the car long term. Well, that's a tangent for another day. I think that ends it for this video. If you have any questions or complaints, you can leave them down below. And in the next video, I will be disassembling the fuel filter regulator, the old one, to see how it's constructed, see what kind of condition it's in. It was quite an interesting process taking that apart, so hopefully you enjoy seeing how well those things are actually built. Well, until then, see ya.